Howdy all. It's Fun Friday. It's Training Camp Friday, which always makes things hectic. We'll have to apologize about yesterday, but Russ was busy with something. I was at the opening day of Leafs training camp in Toronto and just logistically could not get it to work. But today, thankfully, the Maple Leafs have are practicing or are doing the first 3 days of on-ice workouts in Niagara Falls, which cuts my drive in about, it's about 1/3 of the way.
That's great.
That's phenomenal. So it's like it took me a half hour. Took me a half hour to get to the arena that they're playing at. I had enough time that I left at the normal time, Russ, and then I got up to Niagara Falls about 7:30, and I had so much time to kill that I was able to stop off someplace and get some breakfast.
Nice. So that's that small arena, right? That has like the metal stands.
Yeah, it's called the Gale Center Arena. It's got 3 pads. It's a pretty nice facility and modern. And the Leafs brought 73 players to camp, so they needed a couple sheets. And
only 73, really? They couldn't find any more.
Yeah, I mean, just the skeleton crew. So we'll talk about that, and we'll talk about Flyers camp a little bit later. But I wanted to touch on the pre-show, and we'll be brief because we know everybody wants to talk about hockey. The Cleveland Indians yesterday, with a comeback victory, have now won 22 games in a row. Now I know that they've bested the Moneyball A's, so that movie now is obsolete. But
in every way, yes.
Yeah, and I think the only team they have to catch now is there's a team that had 26 in a row. I don't know if it was the Cubs or whoever it was. I didn't pay that much attention to it, but I don't know. I mean, maybe it's my tendency to think of the negative, Russ. But to me, that
is your tendency. If you don't know that, I'm just letting you know that.
Great, thank you. To me, it's all great, that they're winning all these right now, but it's September 15th. It's not October. And this team lost in Game 7 of the World Series. Now, you have to be encouraged. They probably are the favorites in the American League right now. But if you're winning 26 in a row or 22 in a row, you want to be winning in October, not in September. So
it's like, as a fan, it's the worst thing to happen, right? Because you're worried about it, because you see that it's going on, and you're like, damn, I want to be winning these games maybe like a week before the playoffs and then during the playoffs. But if you're a manager, like, you can't derail it, right? Because it's more dangerous to purposefully derail something like that than to have it. So as a manager, you just got to have to hope they win 45 in a row. Like, it's just, it's like that. Hopefully, for their sake, they have the swoon just before the end of the season and then can sort of regroup it in the playoffs. If not, it'll be just another, postseason for Cleveland, unfortunately.
Yeah, and if you remember that streak that the Flyers went on, I think it was in '79.
Yeah.
And that team went to the finals.
Yes.
But they lost to the Islanders in 6 games.
And the Islanders were great, right? I mean,
the Islanders were great. That was the first of 4 cups. But I'm just saying, it's like they had that long streak, and that long streak was right in the middle of the season. And then, they played well after that, but it was right in the middle of the season. And I'm sure Pat Quinn was the coach of that team. I'm sure Pat Quinn probably wished they would have had that. I'm pretty sure it was Pat Quinn, wasn't it?
I think it was. Yeah, I think it was Quinn.
Yeah, and they had Phil Muir and Pete Peters in goal, and it was a really good team. But I'm sure they would have preferred to have that long winning streak, in April, May, and June, than November, December, and January. So
yeah, no doubt. I mean, and that's the thing about it. It's like, at the end of the day, you want them to happen at the right time. They don't, and most times those super hot teams don't win it.
Yeah. Well, let's get started here. Hello, Hockey World. Today is Friday, September 15th, 2017.
I'm Russ Cohn from Sportsology.
And I'm Michael Agello, and this is the HockeyBuzzcast here on HockeyBuzz.com. Well, as typical of a lot of these restricted free agents who, there are rumors of them holding out, and they push it to the 11th hour.
Yep.
when training camp starts, they all seem to fall in line and get the deal done. Now, the one exception to the list I'm going to read off here was Brian Little. He had a year left in his contract, but he was going to be a UFA.
Right.
So let's mention him first. There were 4 contracts of 4 players signed to deals, but Little was entering the final year of his contract. He signs a 6-year deal with Winnipeg at a little over $5 million a year. Little's been a pretty consistent forward for the Jets for the last 4 or 5 years. I think he's a pretty good forward. I think he's a really good number 2 center. I don't know whether they consider him as their number 1 or their number 2, but I his talent level and his production, I think, is number 2 center.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, and honestly, $5.29 million is about what you're paying a number 2 center right now. So I think this is a pretty good deal for both sides.
I think it's worth it, and I think it's one of those deals that they needed to make because he is important in the room. He's important to those guys. He has seasons where they're a little up, a little down, but they're pretty consistent. Mm-hmm. You're going to get at least 50 points out of the guy, right around that range. Sometimes you get more. And so, but he's valuable. He does a lot of the little things. And so I no pun intended. I just think he's important to that team and the makeup of that team. And I think they noticed that and said, let's just get him paid because this is still a cheap rate. If you think about it, for what he can do, he's not an old guy.
Yeah, and that's what, we know that the Jets have some challenges when it comes to players and getting them under contract over the next couple of years. So if they can get something out of the way where it makes sense financially, it behooves them to be able to do it. But right now you've got, I know the Blake Wheeler's got another 2 years left, but that's going to be a tough nut to crack because he's been almost everything for them.
Yeah.
And he's making $5.6 million, and that's a pretty reasonable amount. He's probably going to want, I would say a big raise, not like $7 million, but I'd say.
Yeah, I don't know if he's getting it.
Yeah, he may have to take a deal. Little was making 4.7, and he's getting a raise to basically 5.3.
Yeah, and he's like a 4-time 20-goal scorer. He gets you. Last year he had 47 points. Like, this is the kind of guy that you need to keep on your team. When you have the Scheifele's and everybody else, you need the Littles too.
And I don't think Scheifele's making $6.125 million a year. I don't know whether Wheeler is going to get more than that. They'll probably have their internal cap, and Wheeler will probably have to fit in either equal to that or a little below that for them to want to sign him. But in a year, Laine will be eligible for a contract extension, and you've got obviously the situation with Jacob Trouba. He's in the final year of his 2-year bridge deal. That's a guy. I still don't think he wants to be there, but if he gets the money, then maybe he stays there. I don't know.
This is what I would do. If I were Winnipeg, I would have Teemu Selanne have a chat with Patrik Laine and say, hey, I really like this city. This is what I got out of it. I could have gone elsewhere. That would be a good thing if Selanne was willing to do that. And he might be. Because he really did like it there. Mm-hmm. That's what you need to do because you need some guys like that to stay if they're going to win it all. If not, if Laine for some reason signs a bridge deal and then signs another bridge deal and is gone, and I'm not saying that's going to happen, but if he did that, that would really set him back.
Right, and I'm not forgetting this guy, but Laine's eligible to extend his deal next July. He's got a year after that. So if they couldn't get him on locked up to a deal, they still have a year. Ehlers is up next summer, and that's where Wheeler might be in trouble because Wheeler might want to stay, but that money might be something that they'll pay Ehlers with, and they'll just let Wheeler go after.
If it's up to me and I have a choice, I'm paying Ehlers.
Right. Okay, so we've been talking Pastrnak for the last, I'd say, 6 weeks.
We talked about him? Have we brought him up?
Yeah, no. We did. We hardly mentioned him, right?
Okay.
Yeah, but it finally came to a head. Opening day of training camp, there were indications that they were close to a deal. Deal gets signed yesterday.
Did he pop out from a curtain or something and join practice the minute he signed? No?
I don't know. I have no idea. But he signs a 6-year deal with the Bruins. at $6.67 million per season. Now, this is sort of in between where we thought he made more than Marchand and he's making less than Bergeron. It's not the 8 years because that would have see. And this is the thing: he's coming off his entry level deal. They're only buying 2 years of unrestricted free agency instead of 4.
Right.
And that got the cap hit under $7 million. But if they would have gone the full 8, I think he was probably asking for 7 to 7.5, and they weren't going to give that to him because that would have made him the highest paid player on the team, higher than Tuukka Rask, higher than Krejci. So they give him the 6-year deal at 6.667. I think this is a compromise deal. What do you think, Russ?
It is a compromise deal. I'm fine with it. Like I said, I just wanted it to be under 7. They clearly did too. When I kept hearing 7 and 7.5 from pundits like you and other people, I was like, I don't want to pay that. And
well, I think it would have been that on an 8-year deal. So
yeah, I think you're right. I do think you're right, and I think that's why they kept it this way. And I think this was like, enough of a jumping in point that he felt like they wanted him, and that's a lot of money to spend. So I think it's good for both sides. Now let's see the guy have just as good a year as last year, because I'm telling you, to duplicate that year is going to be difficult for him.
Yeah, I mean, he's probably – see, the thing is, it's set up for him to be able to do that because he's going to play with Bergeron probably and Marchand.
Mm-hmm.
And that line will generate offense. So the only thing he has to worry about, and the only thing the Bruins really have to worry about is, players once they've put the pedal to the metal to get a big deal, then maybe they take the foot off the gas a little bit. And if that happens, then he'll get a lot of heat from the Boston media for asking for this kind of money and not getting the kind of production that he got last year.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, he may have had a career year. That's the worry.
Yeah. So, okay. After Pastrnak, and then there've been, these are relatively minor compared to Pastrnak. That was a big deal, big item to fall off the list. Athanasiou apparently is talking with Detroit, and there's some progress there. So there may be a deal announced with him shortly. The Nikita Zadorov contract finally got solved this afternoon. Zadorov signs a 2-year deal at $4.3 million, so $2.15 million per. For a defenseman, I mean, okay, he's a first-round pick. I liked him in Buffalo. He's big. He's tough. He likes to hit. There's still some question marks in his game, but I think with their situation with 3 NHL defensemen on their, signed, and then it's very questionable who is going to play after that. They really had to get this done.
They did, and this is good for them. And I think I've told you pre-draft, during the draft, after the draft, I was not a big proponent of him, providing offense at the NHL level, and I know some were. So I think he'll be a good puck-moving, physical defenseman. He's a good skater. But I don't think he's adding much in the scoring sheet, and I don't think they expect him to. So I think this was good for both sides. But I think I told you that, and we've talked about it, the KHL threat was weak. Once the season started, he didn't have much of a leg to stand on, really.
Well, you knew it was an empty threat when he said, "I'm going to go by July 31st," and then he's sticking around.
Right.
So basically, you knew he didn't really want to go. He was just.
It's like the Bugs Bunny thing. Don't cross this line. When you cross that line, don't cross this line. Cross that line. You know what I mean? It's like,
it's like the line of death in the Iraq War, and or the line of death, and then you cross it, and I thought it was the line of death.
To keep it light with Bugs Bunny, Mike. You went the complete other way.
Yeah, I know. Anyway, but okay, so Zadorov is signed. The other situation in Colorado, and Eck touched on it in his blog. I'm not so sure how classy the whole thing with Duchene showing up. He really had to show up, otherwise he was going to lose money. But he doesn't want
to have to show up. He can lose money if he wants.
Oh, right, but he doesn't. Right, he doesn't want to lose money. But I think it's basically, I've got a contract, I've got to show up. But really, he doesn't want to talk about the situation there. He wants out of there. It's clear.
Yeah, I mean, now it's clear. Now it's clear that he does want out of there. You're right. I don't think it's cool to freeze out the media. I think answer the round of questions once and then say, this is all that I'll talk about it. And I think the media would have been okay with that. Right. But the fact that he didn't do it now just makes it a little bit sour. End of the day, we still don't know what Colorado has been telling him and he's been telling Colorado. And so at the end of the day, he's pretty frustrated. We could see that. He's usually not the kind of guy that will act out like this. So I don't condone his behavior, but we'll see, because now he's got to go through a whole season potentially before they deal him. I mean, I'm just assuming he's going to at least go to the trading deadline. So that's, a long time that he's going to have to play there.
And there are some indications that they've stripped him of any kind of, like, he had an A. The C was Landeskog, and he had an A, and I guess in team pictures he wasn't wearing the A. So apparently they're saying that he's been demoted from any kind of leadership position. Which, if he's asking out, I don't understand. I don't begrudge them doing that, and I can understand why, because if he's not going to be part of the team pretty soon, then why do you keep him in sort of a...
That's just one of those optics things. Like, does it really even matter?
No, but you know what? I mean, it's something that the media is interested in, and I'll go to what happened in Toronto on Thursday, because they've been asking all summer, is Austin Matthews going to be the team captain of the Maple Leafs? And Mike Babcock and Lou Lamoriello at the end of the season, after the playoffs, in April, said, "I don't think so. No, probably not." And 4 months go by, and it's September, or 4.5 months go by, and they asked Mike Babcock, and he said no. And Lou Lamoriello said, that was asked the reason why. He says, because it's not time yet. Right. So the only people that are really, curious about the whole team captain thing is the media, and I'm part of it, and I'm curious about it. But I respect the fact that, it's a 19-year-old kid, and they don't think he's ready to handle it, and there's leadership on the team. So why put that undue pressure on him? Why don't you just? Right. And I think it's the right move. So, the other contract that was of note was the Marcus Foligno deal. Now, Marcus Foligno was part of the trade that sent Marco Scandella and Jason Pominville to the Sabres, Tyler Ennis and Marcus Foligno going the other way. Foligno was an RFA. He signs a 4-year deal at just under $3 million per season. Russ, Marcus Foligno is not the offensive force that he was that rookie year that he came up, because he was scoring like crazy that year. Yeah. He's a good, solid, I would say, top 9 forward, big, tough, likes to hit. This is about the right amount of money for him, because he's not going to score 20 goals. He'll probably score 12, 15, 16 goals. That he's a good, solid forward, but I think this is a good number for the Wild.
Yeah, I think it is. It's a number they could digest, and it's because they have a lot of high salary guys, and so they're getting a fairly high skill guy. I mean, I don't think he's ever scoring more than 40 points.
Right.
But they got a fairly high skilled guy for the money. And he does have a toughness level too. We know that. We've seen it. All Folignos do. And so at the end of the day, they're paying him for a guy that's going to get, like you said, 10, 15 goals, add some toughness, add some grit. That's fine.
Sorry about that.
It's all right.
Had to blow my nose.
You're entitled.
Okay. This is when it helps to have 3 people on the show. Okay. The news that came out about Alex Ovechkin, there was an article yesterday posted on the statement posted on the Capitals website, and Alex Ovechkin finally succumbed. Finally, mentioned what everybody knew, that he wasn't going to the Olympics. And this is the statement. I said every time I asked since last Olympics that nobody is going to tell me I can't play because my country was going to be allowed to ask me. Now the IIHF and NHL say my country is not allowed to ask anybody in the NHL to play, and there's nothing to talk about anymore. So,
yeah, I mean, we all knew it was going there. He just finally made it public. That's good. I'm sure he's upset about it, but he knew in his heart of heart, he knew. And so at the end of the day, it's a blip on the radar. That's all it is. Even Russia was saying, even Treychak was saying days before, he's not coming. We know that. So Treychak was very gracious in letting him off the hook because previous bosses wouldn't have been so gracious and we would have made him sweat it out.
Well, the funny thing is, I think the maddest person, and you'll never hear this publicly, but this is something I believe, the maddest person will be Ovechkin if the Russians win the gold. He'll publicly be happy for his country, and I'm sure he will be, but he'll be pissed off that he wasn't able to go and play.
Yeah, there's no doubt. I mean, but again, and I feel bad in a way because, look, he carries a lot of weight in that country and therefore a lot of pressure to continue to act as a Russian but also play in the NHL. And that's a hard thing to straddle. Like, American players don't have to go through this. Representing Team USA is not nearly as hard as representing Team Russia. That's just the fact of life.
Yeah, and we know that Russia is probably going to be the, I would say, significant favorite, not overwhelming favorite, but that doesn't mean that they're going to win. I mean,
nobody's invincible, but they look pretty good.
Yeah. In some injury news, Ryan Kesler, according to a report today, had an operation on his hip right after the Anaheim Ducks were eliminated by Nashville. So first week of June. And GM Bob Murray indicated that there was no timeline whatsoever for his return. Now that rings warning bells on a couple of things. It's a hip injury. And whenever it's a hip injury, you wonder about like a loss of speed. And and hip injuries can be degenerative, so you don't know the severity of this.
We're probably not seeing him until November, December.
Right. I mean, we don't, it could be till the new year. We don't know. Now, we know that Anaheim is very deep and talented at forward, and apparently the corresponding move here is going to be Rickard Rakell moving to center from the wing. But
that's good.
Yeah, which I think is a good move.
But it's not Kesler. He's not going to have nearly the success in the face-off dot or playing defense. So they're going to drop down a notch with that, but they'll be okay.
But you put that in connection with a report that came out from Darren Drager this morning that said that Anaheim was at least exploring options looking for forward help. And this is before the story came out about Kesler, and what he put two and two together and said Anaheim and Toronto, two teams that have made deals.
Not going to happen.
Well, no, I don't know if it's not going to happen. I just know that
now it's not going to happen now.
Well, I think there's a greater likelihood of it happening now with Kesler being out. I'm just saying.
Yeah,
they have a backlog of defensemen. They're loaded on defense.
They're not traded defensemen. Lindholm got hurt today.
I didn't even hear that. So
yeah,
I was on the road. So what was the severity of the injury? And I know he's coming back from shoulder surgery. So is this?
Well, I don't know. They just said I guess he's not 100% from the shoulder surgery. So he's not hurt today. He's just not 100%. So he's probably not playing the start of the season.
Oh, no. Yeah, he
that's what it is.
Him and Vatanen, they said we're going to miss time. But, with Lindholm, it was supposed to be a couple weeks into the regular season. With Vatanen, it's supposed to be December. So,
right. So with those guys, they're not trading another defenseman. They can't afford to do that.
They may not trade one now, but when those guys come back, then they will have a surplus. So
yeah, I'm not sure it's happening. I'm going to put thumbs down to that, right?
Okay.
Maybe at the deadline, but right now that's a thumbs down, Mike.
Okay. We'll see. All right, let's get into our team preview, and
let's talk camps before we talk team.
Oh yeah. You're right. I said I was going to, and
yeah. So I'll bring up Flyers camp first. So today was interesting because they mixed, the guarantees, the incumbents, with some of the younger players, with some of the even Phantoms players. They were all mixed up in this camp in groups. I only stayed for group one in the morning, but it was interesting. So a lot of teams don't do that. A lot of teams put the incumbents all together and then put the other guys in a different group. But the Flyers didn't do that. I kind of liked it. I saw some really good things. Korosenkov, again, looked really good.
Now, he's unsigned, right? He's a free agent.
Still unsigned, so anybody could still sign him. But it's rare that a player gets signed when he's in somebody else's camp. Usually the teams wait for that to play out. So I still expect him to get signed. Everything I talk about is up on Sportsology, by the way, so I'm not going to give the whole report. But everything is really interesting in the sense that with the defense, it's possible they could have a rookie third pair. And we'll probably talk about this more tonight on Off the Post with Anthony, because I am not 100% believer that they should go with like Robert Hagg and Sam Morin, let's say, as that third pairing. I actually think Mark Friedman's outplaying Sam Morin right now. And to me, that's kind of interesting because he's another really strong puck-moving defenseman. He's a little small. He's 5'10", but he can really handle himself, and he's one of the fastest guys in camp. Morin, on the other hand, can hit you, has been playing a little better defense, but I noticed a flaw now that two players told me about inadvertently. Basically, because he's a big guy with long arms, he tries to sort of push you off the puck or corral you. But if you're a guy that could shield the puck and sort of hold it, he doesn't really knock away the puck. He doesn't ever steal it and knock it away. And so you really have a chance to still extend the play or even get a shot on net that way. And I saw a few guys do it. I saw Boroviev do it. And Korosenkov talked about shielding the puck from Morin because he was such a big guy. And at one point, Korosenkov went straight for him. He actually went right into him, which I found interesting and gutsy. But the point was, that's something that Morin has to work on in this camp, because that book will get out on him and guys will be able to do that. And they'll look to do that when that third pairing's on the ice. The other team will look to match up to make that happen. So that's just a little thing that I noticed. And then I had an exclusive with Laterra, and interesting, he is so happy to be in Philly, and he said today's practice was the most fun he's had in a long time. So that is, to me, is a real indictment of Ken Hitchcock and how he could sort of suck the life out of your game sometimes.
Wear on somebody after a while, yeah. And now when's
the last time you've gotten that response from a player after their first practice?
Yeah, I've never heard that, but very, very rarely have I heard something like that.
Yeah.
Now Laterra is probably going to be what, their third or their fourth line center?
He's not going to be a center.
He's not going to be a center. Wow.
No, I don't think so, because they have so many centers that he right now is playing the left wing with Val Filppula, and they're familiar with each other. They train with each other.
Mm-hmm.
So there's some chemistry there. And I think Ron Hextall did a smart thing here, because I saw last year in June when the trade was made for Braden Shen, that some people were like, we don't like Laterra. He's overpaid at 4.7, and he's just not very good. I actually saw that written, and I'm like, guy's still 29 years old. He's only 3-4 years in the league now. I think this is his fourth season. And you got to sort of give him a chance here, because I know his numbers have dropped. But at the end of the day, this is a guy who's really motivated now, and I saw that there's a big speed difference with him from last year to this year. He's really worked on that. So if you want to read more about it on Sportsology, you can. But the point is, him and Filppula, that's something where I think Hextall knew about that. He already had Filppula. He knew he could get Laterra. Why not? Because the more combinations that you can get like that, like today in camp they had Pascal Laberge paired with Korosenkov, who, they were teammates. And so, it's good to do that to start a camp with guys that are familiar with each other, to sort of see, hey, what do we have in both of these guys? And that's the same thing as we always say with Austin Matthews and Jeremy Bracco. They just, there's some guys that match up well together. So I think Hextall made a good move here. And at 4.7 for 2 more years, that's a good rate for Laterra. That is not a horrible pay rate to pay him.
If he produces, you're right. And to go along with that in Leafs camp, Babcock, now like I said, they had 73 players. They broke them up into 3 groups. And when 2 of the groups scrimmaged late in the morning and early afternoon, and what Babcock did was he kept the lines, at least a couple of them, the Van Riemsdyk, Bozak Marner line that was together for most of the season. He kept that line together. He kept Zach Hyman, Austin Matthews, and William Nylander together, which I'm sure is going to raise the ire of some people in Leafs Nation, because the thought was that Patrick Marleau was going to be put with Austin Matthews. And it appears right now, and, Babcock said, everything is fluid right now. We're not committing to anything right now. So, but it gives you an indication if they're doing this at the beginning of training camp, they want familiarity there. And the lines were successful last year, so he's not going to mess with success.
Right.
They had Marleau playing the left side. Nazem Kadri had a maintenance day, so he was off. So they had somebody else playing in the middle, Freddie Gauthier.
Wait, he had a maintenance day on the first day of camp?
Yeah, there's something. It's
that's not a good sign. That's
well, no, he talked to the media on Thursday. Everybody's saying he's coming in the best shape of his career, and there was just something. Babcock wouldn't specify what it was.
He's got a little owie, because you generally don't miss that first day of camp. You don't. Yeah. You have to have some sort of injury that they don't want to disclose. Something minor, but they don't want to disclose.
He said very, very minor, and Zaitsev also missed the opening day too, but it's not supposed to be anything serious. But they moved Leo Komarov from the left side to the right side on that, to accommodate Marleau. So if you're talking that line with Kadri up the middle, then you're probably going to have Connor Brown, who scored 20 goals last year, on the fourth line with Matt Martin and Dominic Moore, which I think is actually going to would be a pretty decent line. And a guy like Kasperi Kapanen, there's going to be 2 or 3 forwards fighting for positions, but a guy like Kasperi Kapanen with options to go to the American Hockey League is probably going to start with the Marlies unless he just lights it up.
Yeah, that just shows now that there's enough depth in Toronto's organization that Kapanen can't crack the lineup.
Now the other thing that happened yesterday was that Roman Polak joined the team on a PTO, which I've been saying for the last month or so. I thought was going to happen.
This is really shocking news.
Yeah. Now the thing is they have to say this, and I understand why. Polak was basically saying, "I'm happy to be back. There have been no promises made." Babcock says, it's up. Polak did not skate, and then he skated with one of the groups during a workout, but didn't play in the scrimmage, even though his group scrimmaged. Mm-hmm. So Babcock basically said, when he's ready to play, he'll let me know. He's a veteran, and I trust him. Russ, my impression is that I think that Polak is going to be signed to a contract. I think,
of course,
that this is going to probably cost Martin Marincin his job as the 7th defenseman.
Yeah, they're probably giving Marincin a few days to see if there's something they overlooked. But if not, that's exactly what's going to happen.
I think Polak will be signed. Marincin will probably end up getting waived, because I don't think they're going to carry 8 defensemen, because they have all these young guys who they can ferry back and forth between the Marlies and the Leafs, and they don't have to carry 8 defensemen for fear of waivers. So if he's healthy, if he's 100% or close to 100%, and they just maybe give him a little extra time, I think he's going to be part of this team. You don't go out and be effusive with your praise of Roman Polak on one day and then say, well, we're not going to re-sign unless his leg is not healed. I think if he's healthy, he's going to get signed.
Yeah, I agree. Totally agree.
So, okay, let's get into the team preview here. We're going to tackle the New York Rangers. The Rangers were 48, 28, and 6 last year, 102 points. 102 points, and they finished 4th in the Metropolitan Division.
Yeah.
Beat the Montreal Canadiens in the first round, lose to the Ottawa Senators in the second round, which was a surprise because I took Rangers in my playoff hockey pool.
Yeah.
The big addition for this season is the signing of Kevin Shattenkirk to a 4-year deal at around close to $7 million per, which I would have thought he was going to get a much longer deal than he did. They trade Derek Stepan to the Arizona Coyotes. They move Antti Ranta in that deal, add David Desharnais, and they re-signed Brendan Smith. But all in all, I mean, this is pretty much the same team. I mean, the Stepan trade is big because I think it creates a little bit of I would say, a gap up the middle, but it might be something that they can solve with, say, JT Miller moving up the middle. I mean, what is your thought on the Rangers?
Yeah, I think they're better off than they were last year. They're a little askew though on D, in the sense that because they picked up D'Angelo, now Vigneault is sort of putting down the gauntlet on Mark Stahl, like almost like, hey, look, Dan Girardi's gone. Mark Stahl, you have to prove yourself in this camp. You don't have a guaranteed spot. Like that's what he basically said the other day. And of course, a lot of fans rumbled over that, mostly in the positive way, in the sense that they don't want Mark Stahl to have a guaranteed spot. So you look at their pairings, and McDonough, Shattenkirk, that'll be obvious. After that, I'm not sure I agree with roster resource, because I don't know if it's going to be Mark Stahl and Brendan Smith, or Brady Shea and Nick Holden. As crazy as it sounds, they might have Brady Shea with Nick Holden as the second, and Brendan Smith and somebody else on the third. Just because if it is D'Angelo, if D'Angelo beats out Stahl, then that could happen. It's not a guarantee now that Mark Stahl is going to start with this team. So we'll see. I'm sure he's going to end up on the team, but now that he sort of has put this little bit of doubt, we have to sort of see how it plays out on defense. As far as offensively, they've taken a little bit of a step back. I mean, losing Stepan doesn't help them. Zibanejad is not a number one center, but neither was Stepan, so at least they have the size. And so I think he plays the role a little better. Roster Resource has Zibanejad, Buchnevich, and Kreider as a top line. I don't think that's going to necessarily be the case, but okay. They have Nash, Hayes, and Zuccarello as the second, which was a good line last year, and they might keep it together just for keeping it together's sake. So that is possible. Desharnais, Miller, and Grabner, I'm not in love with that line. I'm not a huge Desharnais guy. To me, he's going to really have to prove himself.
Yeah, Desharnais is a fourth-line center. Yeah.
So
I mean,
I'm not in love with that. And then
I think Jimmy Vesey's on their third line.
Yeah, I think this is where Roster Resources is wrong. I think VC will be on the third line with Miller and Grabner. I'm not sure even Nieves and Pumple and Desharnais is the way they're going to go on that bottom line, but I'm pretty sure Desharnais will be the fourth line center. I'm not sure Nieves will make the team, and then you might have Pumple and then somebody else, maybe someone like Robin Kovacs, maybe somebody else really steps up and makes this team. Will Elias Anderson make the team? If he makes the team, then that does change things up the middle, like you were talking about. And then Miller would go back to the wing, and then would push everybody down. And then Nieves definitely wouldn't make it, and then Desharnais might be back to being a winger as well. But that's only if Anderson makes it and he's a rookie, and the odds of that are against him. Other than that, I kind of look and I'm like, nobody else is really ready to make the jump.
Well,
guys that are close.
They did invite two guys on PTOs. One, Bobby Farnham, which strikes me as more of an AHL type of situation, but Andrew Desjardins also. And yeah. I don't know. I mean, maybe that's the way they go as a fourth line ad. A guy who's a veteran guy who fits in as a fourth line guy. Desjardins
They've done that before, and so that is a possibility. It is a possibility.
I can't see, I mean, maybe it's just based on reputation, and I understand, Vigneault calling a player on the carpet, especially one that's signed for another 4 years at $5.7 million. But I cannot see Mark Stahl sitting in favor of Nick Holden. I mean, if Alain Vigneault is that clueless when it comes,
and now you're getting into dangerous territory, because that he has a fondness for him and he has that offense. Berezhgalov is another one who's sort of an X factor. If he were to come in, he's been playing in the KHL. The reports were pretty good, but the people that I know that were watching him weren't sure if he's NHL ready just yet. We'll see. If Berezhgalov is NHL ready, then that would push D'Angelo down, and then that would likely also change up that third pairing. And so, again, if you had Berezhgalov, you're not going to put him in Holden. I don't think that would be the case. And if Stahl were to make it, I think the safe thing would be to go with Shea and Berezkalov, because at least Shea's got a year under his belt, and then you would stick with that second pairing of Stahl and Smith.
Now Pavlik comes in to replace Ranta as the backup. Lundqvist had, I thought, overall a good season last year.
Not Stahl and Smith, sorry. It would be, the second pairing would end up being Shea and Smith, and then the third pairing would be, I guess it would have to be Berezkalov and Smith or Berezkalov and Holden. That'll be a tough one to figure out, actually. Now jostling around in my mind.
Yeah. Now Lundqvist did suffer a knee injury due to William Nylander's enthusiasm at the end of the World Championships, but apparently he's fully recovered. I mean, are you concerned about the creeping old age of Lundqvist?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I mean, I'm telling people right now, fans and teammates, don't jump in Henrik Lundqvist's direction. Just don't do it. We don't need anybody jumping in front of Henrik Lundqvist. Like, that's a bad thing to do right now at his age. So, in all seriousness, though, I still think he's going to be primed to have a really good year. The thing about it is, for people that are, saying that maybe they'll win the Jennings, I'm not that high on Pavlik. I really need to see a resurgence in Andrei Pavlik.
Yeah, I mean, when he was on in Winnipeg, he was very good. Problem was he wasn't on a lot, and that was as a starter. And he lost his job to Hellebuyck, who I think they probably gave the job to a lot earlier than they wanted to, because Pavlik was inconsistent. So whether he can, reclaim a bit of his, whether he can return to a more consistent role as a number two is yet to be seen. And he really didn't succeed that much as a number one, but I think it's a risk worth taking. I mean, there were other goaltenders out there who were signed as backups who were signed for close to $3 million. Anders Nielsen, Jonathan Bernier, Chad Johnson with the Sabres, and they got Pavlik for $1.3 million. So if it works, it's great, and if it doesn't work, you can bury most of that money down in the minors if you need to call up a Halverson, or if you think they're
I mean, that's the thing. If you call up Halverson, you're not really improving it. So then you would have to go out and get somebody, right? So we'll see. We'll see how it works out. Pavlik will probably live out the year, but I just need to see a little more out of him. The other interesting thing is, Jesper Fast is out until probably November at the best. And so, but when he comes back, that's where somebody like Pumpel or Desharnais has to sort of worry about their playing time. That's when, if they're not doing it by then. So that it gives the Rangers a little depth, and it gives them some fresh legs to pump in maybe at the right time of the season. Am I keeping you up, Mike? Because if I am, just tell me.
I breathed. Excuse me.
But I'm sorry the Rangers are so boring to you compared to the Leafs. Sorry. While you're wearing your Leafs sweater there that I wasn't going to say anything about, but now I did.
Purple.
Yeah, it doesn't look purple. That looks Leaf blue to me.
It's purple.
Yeah, whatever. Anyhow.
Are you colorblind?
I am not colorblind. I can see purple. I watched Purple Rain. This is a good team, though. And to be honest, I don't expect them to win the division, but if Pittsburgh were to have regular season issues, like some hiccups with injuries and the cup hangover, they could come in ahead of Pittsburgh. It's possible.
So you think they're top three in the Metro?
Yeah, they're top three.
Okay, I think they'll finish second or third in the division. So I mean, obviously means a playoff team. I think for them to go deeper into the playoffs, they're probably going to have to make some sort of deal, or they get themselves some center help. And I'm not going to say Tavares, because anybody who has got a shortage at center is going to have a dream scenario of trading for John Tavares, which I don't think is going to happen. And he's either going to get signed, or he's going to wait till July and go free agency. But
I mean, if they're going to go far, they're going to probably have to beat Pittsburgh again, which is not an easy task. I think I was there the last time they beat Pittsburgh, actually, when Lundqvist went into that building and won. That's a tough, tall order. So they're going to either need some help.
Was that the Brad Richards game?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, they're going to either need some help, or they're going to have to, bear down and actually beat Pittsburgh. But then if they went into a conference final situation again against Tampa, which I was also at that series and watched them lose, that's a tough matchup again for them, because right now Tampa is still younger than the Rangers. Not much, because the Rangers have added a lot more youth. Here's my cat, Allie. She decided to jump into the action here.
Allie the cat. Nice.
I know. We didn't really get inventive on that one. But she wants – no, I think Tampa's also a tough matchup for the Rangers. I think it's possible they could beat them. But if Stamkos comes back and he's Stamkos again, I'm not sure that's a good matchup for them either. So it's hard to see the Rangers going beyond the conference finals the way everything's shaking out. And I know I haven't even mentioned the Capitals, but you know what? There's still this thing in the back of my head that says if the Rangers are facing the Capitals, they probably can beat them.
Yeah, and the Capitals are not as strong as they were last year, so it might be an easier matchup. I mean, like I said, I think they're a playoff team. I think they're going to need to bolster themselves up the middle if they have a chance to go deep. And the one guy I look at, and I think I mentioned this to you before, and I think it's a natural fit because of his previous connection with Rick Nash playing, I think, with in the Olympics, and their buddies, and they played during the lockout in Switzerland.
Yeah.
If San Jose is not a playoff team and they shop Joe Thornton as a rental,
if they shop Thornton as a rental, the Rangers would be all in. No question.
I think it makes perfect sense. I don't think it's going to cost you a ton because there are only going to be a few teams out there that can handle. I think he's making $8 million. They'll probably have to eat half that salary, but I think there'll be limited teams that will be willing to take him on because of his age. But there'll be some teams that need that bolstering up the middle. But I think it would make a lot of sense. And then if you add him, everybody else sort of moves down one space, and I think it would make sense.
For a short run, it makes an awful lot of sense. It does.
Yeah. So, okay. We will be back on Monday.
Listen to Off the Post tonight. Look at Mike's Twitter feed, and you could see that it'll be on at 10, and click on that. We'll have a lot more to talk about.
Yeah, maybe I'll have taken a nap by then, Russ.
Well, I mean, otherwise you'll just fall asleep. Maybe Anthony will keep you awake.
I can't answer that. All right. For Russ Cohen, I'm Michael Agello. Thanks for watching, and remember, without the buzz, it's just hockey.